fucking peanut gallery over here. Jesse's like a little child. He's got his little stool, his coffee. It's gonna be so hard to do this. All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are probably at one of my favorite shops. I try to come up here as much as possible, see one of my buddies. Capone needs some help. When we put this truck together, we knew what we were doing, but we didn't know what we were doing. And it needs way more traction. And I really wanted Jesse to really dial this truck in, since now we own it and we've been just driving it a bunch. We noticed a couple of things when we street tuned it in Dallas when they were down for C10 Nationals, and we're here and we're just gonna have some fun for the weekend and learn a bunch of things and hang out with Jesse and his family for the weekend.
Yeah, my cousin worked at a brawl's house. Get a duck, take her to the back, put that in her mouth. Leave the butt, going up my
So really the only time you need a helper spring is when you're using like a short spring and you got a lot of shock stroke. You need it so like if you go over a big bump, it doesn't unload the spring and let it flop around. That's its only job. Most of the time, guys will run these trucks so low that they back this down a bunch and the spring's so short.
And it just moves around.
That once you stroke the shock, it needs take up.
Gotcha, okay.
So that's what a helper spring is it's a take up spring.
Have to
So
take
the
all that
entire
pressure
arm
off
had
of it
fallen
then.
off. And I'm sure it wasn't
Well, here,
because
hold
the bolt was loose. It just didn't tighten evenly down on the bar. So should be good to go now. So what we're doing is
Brandon needs us to talk other than our regular stuff.
the thickness of the shoulder of this Delrin bushing was keeping, okay, so say you got a 40-inch wide bar and each arm is 1 inch, and then the shoulders of these are, well, these were like not quite 3/8. Anyways, the splines on the bar, you know, say there's so much length, the arm needs to go all the way onto it because there's a pinch bolt, so it pinches evenly across the splines. Well, the bar was only, it was 3/4 of the way through the arm. So our theory was that when they were tightening it down, it was kind of like not evenly tightening down. So that's why one walked off. So I'm just turning these down almost 3/16 on each side to allow the splines of the bar to go all the way through the arms. Yo.
I gotta die, man. Don't you even try, man. Suckers gon' leave once I let these puppers fly, man. Mama gonna die, man. I like to get high, man.
See here, boys, what we ran into. So this is an independent rear suspension truck. You've got a lower control arm that should be parallel to the ground or slightly uphill from the ground, and then the upper control arm. And so if you have them both parallel to each other, there's no intersect ever, so the traction is non-existent. The tire, it won't mechanically bite the tire very much. So what we did is this truck has got adjustment in that, and right now it's got a pretty big spacer, so we can either go 1 or 2 positions. Actually, there's 3 positions total. It would be the arm all the way up, all the way down. You could kick it one way or the other. And so all we did is we swapped that spacer to the top of the Heim to push the front of the upper arm down. So we created some intersect in the rear control arm. So what it'll do is it'll bite and create more mechanical grip. So it should make quite a bit of difference.
The fuel economy is so good in this. A+. 6 miles per gallon. When we babied it to Conroe, it was 7.8 or something like that.
What's up? You guys want to do a little dance with everyone?
Is there a measurement we need to take?
No.
No. No.
Are you filming? Yeah. All right, let's go.
That's start the video like that.
Your
Are you
fat thumb was
filming?
in the way. Oh. So when I drove it yesterday, I noticed that like I hit steering lock without any kind of turning radius, turning left.
Yeah.
And then all the way right, like you could feel the wheel almost get into the control arm.
Yeah.
So it means that the rack wasn't centered Well, or they off-center the rack when they did the alignment to keep the steering wheel
Because
straight.
when we centered it, I did your little trick about putting the stops in. So we put the stops in, and then we took it to alignment. And you were saying some alignment shops, if they've never done something like this, they'll just chase the alignment to just try to get it right.
And that's exactly what we did. Yeah. Forget about the steering wheel. You can move it a spline or so, you know. And then the canceller in the column, you can just move it, you know, to get it
straighten it up.
centered. Yeah. So I always just say, don't, you know, if you're way off on the steering wheel, call me. I'll come and move the steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just undo it and put it back on.
But all these racks ship with a paint mark on the input shaft, and then they paint mark the housing too.
Okay.
So you line the paint marks up, and then we use toe plates, and we'll just get the toe pretty close, and then I'll set the wheel. And if I need to move the tie rods a little bit one way or the other, I will.
Because the one thing you did mention yesterday when we were lowering the truck, when we were kind of done for the day yesterday, is that the truck has a lot of toe in because it's set up more for the street than it is the track. Because on a track setup, it wouldn't have any toe in from like when it's touching the ground all the way down.
Yeah, when we race, we run toe out.
Toe out, that's right.
Yeah, toe out. And it depends on how, you know, what kind of racing you're doing. Autocross, you can run, like we've run up to half-inch total toe out.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, like even Bill Holt and Rob in that red Blazer, like they run 5/8 inch toe out.
Wow.
So I mean,
Crazy.
yeah. Well, and those spindles have tons of Ackerman in them.
Yeah.
So like it can really lead and cut, you know, when it's got a lot of toe out. What it does is it cheats the inner tire.
Yeah,
So
for
the inner
sure.
tire turns even further.
Is that the same thing? So a lot of people talk, like you'll get people, they'll refer to like wheel scrub or whatever. That's because people think that one wheel is turned more than the other in an actual turn.
You actually want
Yeah,
that.
you want that. But
Yeah.
people talk about like, I think I have too much scrub or not enough scrub or.
Yeah, so in drifting, they change their Ackerman around,
Yeah.
you know, depending on how much they want, you know, how much they want. But like, even like F1, they run the opposite of Ackerman. So they aim, you know, they move the tie rods in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so instead of cutting the inner, you know, the outer will cut first. And
What
so
would
they
be-
load the outside tire harder.
Okay, load the
So it's more for real high speed stuff.
Yeah, high speed turns.
Yeah.
All right, well.
Yeah, if you look at side-by-sides or four-wheelers too, if you ever like drive a four-wheeler, it really loads the outside tire. It has the opposite of vacuum. I don't remember what the term is, but it's opposite of what we typically do because it'll like load the outside tire.
Yeah, because it's like all the force in that turn is on one side. That's how you see like those guys do those one-sided like two-wheel drives and stuff.
Yup.
For the green, that light green, I put it to my limit. The ride, the hood stripping, we tipping, the truck, so pull up on my thick to see you skipping.
So explain.
Loaded.
Loaded.
Yeah.
All
so
the
you
way
would
on the
simulate like the load at, you know, with aero and everything. You know, so when it's racing, you know, that's where the alignment is.
And then what do they have? Just the little slide plates so they can do it on the ground while all the suspension's already loaded?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they even make machines that like pull the cars down.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what about, everyone has this whole thing about like corner balancing and getting it really set up. What's the pros and cons for a guy who's just gonna drive the car on the street or a guy who's gonna race it?
Racing, you definitely want a corner balance because then you get the weights at each corner. Like you want your cross weights to all match.
And that's basically, you're just adjusting the suspension height-wise to get them even all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're adjusting preload on the coilover to hold more weight or the other side to take weight away from your side.
Because like on a normal, like a truck that we'll set up, so they buy like a full Ride Tech coilover kit, we'll go with a tape measure all the way around and get the truck as level as possible. That you're actually setting the suspension level or weighted all to the same.
Yeah, corner balancing, you'll affect all the corner ride heights.
Yeah.
You know, they won't all be the same.
They won't match, yeah.
No, and so that's why we will place ballast weight in certain areas to get the corner balance right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we put them on scales, you'll see like a 100-pound difference from side to side, and you can get a lot of that out from just adjusting the preload.
So normally is it like a half a turn of a coilover, a couple of turns to chase that weight?
Ideally, yeah.
Is it
Ideally.
normally a lot of turns or less turns, or it could just be sometimes a quarter of a turn?
Yeah, so when we put a coilover together, like the front set, we'll try to, on the toolbox, you know, set them equal.
Yeah.
And then when we corner balance, we know that we set the preload about the same. You don't just haphazardly spin them up, you know. But yeah, so if this was light by 100 pounds, like you would add preload so that this side starts to hold more weight.
Okay. So if this is off 100 pounds, you would add more preload.
Yeah, so that holds, it'd be like
You're holding more weight.
It'd be like me and you picking up on something,
Gotcha.
and if I start to let off, you start to hold more of it.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
You get people that ask like, hey, why do this or why do that? Just for frame of reference for everyone. Because a lot of people are like, oh, corner balance this, or they don't know what they're getting themselves into. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. Because when we set this up, we just set it all with a tape measure, took it to the alignment shop and let it roll. Because the guy was just gonna drive it on the street.
Yeah.
He was not expecting to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, and any of that stuff is unnecessary for a truck that just drives around the street. Yeah. Unless a guy is like me that wants to get every ounce of potential out of the
100%.
chassis. Then the alignment will make it shine or make it suck, really.
I think the first time you drove it when we were in Texas a month or two ago, didn't you say for the street, I think this spring was a little too stiff for the street?
It feels a little oversprung for the street, but it's always a guess.
Yeah.
You target a wheel rate, and we do spring rate by guessing what the weight of the vehicle is going to be.
For sure.
And to do it right, you would need to know the weights, and you would need to know your motion ratio and the control arm.
What about unsprung weight, with a wheel? Like if a guy was gonna run a larger diameter wheel or a smaller diameter wheel, will that take into account the spring rate you choose?
No.
No, not
Because
at all.
unsprung weight, it's not sprung, so
Okay.
it doesn't affect the spring.
Okay, perfect. So what that means is this thing's got a lot of bump steer. So when you compress it, it's really towing out a ton. So the front's 77 and 9/16, the rear's 75 and a half. That's why they had this one cranked in a ton. So what we need to do is start moving them both the same amount.
We cannot have hydro addicts. I'm frantic and I'm bouncing like a rabbit. Don't panic, understand it.
Okay, 76 and 7/8. That's a 16th toe out. This is driver front, passenger front.
Okay.
And then so you can see this would make a difference in handling. You would feel this a little bit.
Okay.
So you would want to add preload here or take preload away from that one.
Okay.
Yep. And then the rears, we can chase that a bunch, but every pickup truck I've ever built, if you were really to try to get this, you have to add weight.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
There's way more preload in the right rear.
Yeah, you can try right now to just add preload here, and then add a little preload there and see what it does.
So with me in the car, it's 4,000 pounds. 4,098.
Yeah, right now it's 38.93.
Damn, I'm fat.
Super fat.
Dude, I need to lose some weight.
You wanna adjust it?
What do you want to do?
I wanna adjust it.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's lift the lift up.
Okay.
We're gonna try to push the weight towards the back, right?
You're gonna make that corner hold more of the weight. Yeah, I would.
And at the same time, or you'd be pushing the weight
Yes.
so the right rear would hold, kind of like table leg. If you extend the table leg,
Yes. That's exactly how it works. Yep. So another thing to consider is that the tie rod location moves up and down with caster. So this is our tie rod arm. When we lean it back, it moves it up. When we lean it forward, it moves it down. So we've got a lot of bump steer now, but you may be way off on caster. If you add more caster and it moves the tie rod up, your bump steer it will change. So look how much this one changed, and then it brought that down.
yeah.
So that's good. And then same back here. Took weight off that and then added weight there. I would do a little more on both.
Like for a normal driver who doesn't understand race car stuff, say they were way out of whack, and they were get in their car after someone did this, what would their expectations be of how the car?
Equal handling,
Just equal.
left to right. Yeah, car feels more balanced when you drive
I
it.
may understand what balance means, but the normal guy maybe trying to do this in broad, he bought some scales.
Well,
he
and
may
I'll-
understand what balance is.
And unless you drive hard, you'll never know.
Yeah.
only under like very hard driving does any of this felt, you know.
And say someone was building something like this and they wanted the biggest power, they wanted the best chassis. Because when we talked, this truck it would be okay for autocross, but it just makes too much power.
Oh yeah.
What would someone want to use this truck for if you're making say you're making over 800 horsepower? What would be the best case scenario for a guy like this?
Fun highway, fun around town, fun date night, and you could do like HPDE events. You could do open track days, and you would have a blast. Yeah.
Because autocross, the courses are so short, it would just, it'd be hard to do.
Because you're only in second gear when you autocross, and this has so much torque that it just destroys and it doesn't allow the suspension any time to work because you hit the suspension in the tire with torque immediately. So it doesn't allow it to like weight transfer and then make power.
It doesn't allow it to bite and go and actually have traction.
Well, so an exaggeration of that would be like doing a burnout away from a stop sign or like gradually progressing and flooring it from a stop sign. You'll feel the car accelerate versus not accelerate.
Yeah, we didn't talk about like building the rear arm, swapping the spacer. Yesterday when we took it for a drive, we had to do some pre-tuning. We're chasing small we think we have it figured out. And now you can like really lay into the throttle and the truck would just bite and move forward instead of it just spinning and trying to get traction.
So that's another thing to think about too is when your rear weight is off this much too, you'll feel it go one way or the other under hard acceleration.
Yeah, and it would always, if you would hammer it would go to the right really bad.
Yeah, so when you get these equal, it'll push forward straight. Yeah.
Stopping that arm, you're basically to bite even harder and move a little faster.
Okay, on this, see we were there, and then now we're here. But look at the rear. The rear has gotten quite a bit better. You know, we've added 40 pounds to that side. Now you can kind of choose where you want it to go. Like if you want this side to come up or if you want this side to go down. You know, just like maybe measure. You know, if this side's starting to get too high, you know, we can just do the other corner or something.
Yeah.
Or you can let this side come back down, whichever one. But I wouldn't do anything back here. This won't get crazy better. Like if you wanted to right now, you could just try adding preload to that corner and see what it does to the front. Yeah, the more we add here too though, it will take off here too.
Yeah.
The whole truck's trying to hold more. We're trying to lift like this. So it's also gonna take more off that. Maybe take some off that. Yeah, but that'll add more weight back here. Let's try to just adjust this one and then put it back down. Just stay in there, Patrick. So 884, I mean, it only raised it 4 pounds and dropped this one a hair. So let's take preload off here now.
You think about equal one turn?
You may, how much did you move that one last time? 1.4 revolution?
I did 2. So 4.
Go back down 1.
Back 1. Okay.
Yeah, go back down 1. We're only 40 pounds off in the front.
Yeah. Which ideally, what would you like it?
Exact same. So your cross weights are the same. Yeah.
And then at that point, you get the best handling possible.
Yeah, the only way to do that in a pickup truck is to move weight.
Ballast weight.
Think about what all's over here.
Back here, yeah.
You know, like keys here, steering wheel, steering column, pedals, fuse block. Like there's so much stuff over here.
Yeah.
You know, that when you build one, you have to build it, put things back there.
Yeah.
So like in the yellow and white truck, I put my oil tank back there.
Yeah, everything was on that
my
side.
My ECU and everything was behind the passenger seat. I put as much weight right behind the cab in front of that tire as I possibly could.
Just like this truck, pretty much.
The hydrolift pump was over there.
Fuel tank.
Everything was over there to get the cross weights perfect. So if this was like a purpose-built truck, like we had bought carbon stuff for the front, a light motor, and it still scaled off like this, we would scale it with like false weight back here, and then we would get it scaled perfect and be like, okay, well now we know we needed to add 90 pounds right there. And so then we would add it with we'd make a mount and put lead weights in it. And that's what, well, watch this. This is probably like 30 pounds. And you can see what it does. It won't do a ton, but you'll see the rear get closer and see, look, I added that over there.
Right.
Now what we would do is we would add however much weight we think, so say it's 90 pounds, and then rescale it around that and see how close you can get. Yeah, because it'll change everything. A little bit of weight somewhere will change all the settings.
And then, like you said, you just build a box and then start adding lead.
Yep.
And then would you put that underneath?
Yeah, yep, yep. And the bad thing is if you put weight really far back, then you create a pendulum effect. So if it gets sideways, it has a tendency to carry its weight all the way around.
Yeah.
If the weight's all in the middle of the truck, when it gets sideways, it doesn't continue pulling around.
No panic, understand it. Just like bandits, get gone into your bedroom.
What'd you do, Nick?
Broke Jesse's Allen bit.
Broke Jesse's badass 1/8" Allen bit. Straight hit. I love that for us.